week at Staples?
Printing you new signs for the times.
Get back to business with custom printed signs and sales materials. Staples has hundreds of designs to choose from, or just upload your own.
And now at Staples, get 15% off signs, posters, or decals when you spend $75 or more.
Some items printed same day when ordered before 2 p.m.
Save big on custom printing at Staples.
Ends 5/29/21.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 22nd, 2021. Bondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, been one of those days going through a lot of mental troubling thinking. In the past 2 days, you think about that black people would have been, celebrating somewhat the verdict in the Chauvin trial in Minneapolis, but yet there's been 2 more blacks killed by police officers, Charlton, in the past 2 days. Yesterday, a young man was shot in the back, after the police were trying to serve a warrant on him, and he tried to run, and they shot him in the back, which you're not supposed to do by law. You're not supposed to shoot someone when they're fleeing. And then also, Charlton, the young lady that was shot in Columbus, Ohio by the police. I understand that she was wielding a knife, but think about this, Charlton. We saw during the George Floyd death protest last summer, Kyle Rittenhouse, a white boy with an AR-15 who had killed 2 people on the street on camera and shot another, and police didn't shoot him, Charlton. They coached him into giving up the gun and turning himself in. There's a different challenge in life when you're black and white in America. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They're always trying to save life, Charlton.
Always trying to save life. I want to say today was sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic. He'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at still pictures. Man, I love pausing. Everybody's got to pause. It's good for our mental health, Big C, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, it's very important, Charlton, that America is concerned about the mental health of our great veterans. Unfortunately, we lose over 24 a day to suicide, Charlton. We live in such a horrific time in this country where you think that all people should be treated equal. Our veterans are not even treated equal, Charlton. They're treated like minorities in many situations. They're left behind after they've served this country, Charlton, and many of them have felt that they had no choice but to commit suicide. They suffer mentally, physically, and financially after serving this country and not asking for anything in return other than a little support when they try to come back home and assimilate into society. We as a culture need to pay attention to every human being in this country, Charlton, because as they say, we the people in the Constitution.
Yep.
But we're not all treated as people in this country, and we need to do better as Americans.
We are doing the best we can. We'll get better every day. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can hopefully get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run King Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, helping to put people back to work. Just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships are doing it. Sports teams are doing it too. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see our apps pop up all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Man, you got to rise and shine every day. I know everybody's going through something, but it all gets better with conversation, Big C. I'm just noticing in Northern California, there's some military helicopters flying over. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're just out on a test run, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, in this day and age, we never know what the military is being doing above, when they're flying above private neighborhoods, Charlton. You just always have to be on alert these days.
You gotta always be on alert. I know our military veterans, they're always on alert. That's why we love giving out that military crisis hotline, Big C. So much going on in this world of sports. We have some volleyball being played today, some baseball being played today. Of course, basketball is being played almost every day, it seems, somewhere in the great United States of America. I want to start off today just thinking about of all the great things that we've talked about in the world of sports, Big C, and I know everybody has their own feeling about what makes them feel good, what makes them get out of bed, what makes them rise and shine every day. And I love definitely paying homage to our military when it comes to that. But I want to start off today talking about a little bit of what happens in the world of Black American sports history, Big C, in spring of 2018. The man in charge of growing Major League Baseball's pool of minority job candidates becomes concerned about one of the star pupils, Big C. Didn't really understand the interviews he arranged for her weren't really a job offer, Big C. They were just interviews, like going through the process, but no job offers were really coming out of it. When you think about it, to Tyrone Brooks, Bianca Smith epitomized the type of person that his program existed to help. In college, Smith set the ambitious goal of one day running a major league front office, Big C. Ever since she worked tirelessly in the sport, trying to break into it, long dominated by Caucasian men, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what we've talked about continuously when we talk about black job opportunity in the coaching realm for black professionals and even collegiate professionals, Charlton, is that they go in and they interview, and that's where the process stops. We've often heard the term, well, they did not interview well.
Yeah.
What is interview well? I mean, they did not punch all the white buttons, Charlton, when they were doing the interview?
Well, whatever it is, you went through the process, like going through the car wash, but your car's still dirty by the time you come out of the car wash. After graduating from Dartmouth University, Big C, in 2012, Smith earned a JD in sports law and an MBA in sports management from Case Western Reserve University. Smith also persuaded Case Western's baseball team coach to create a position on his staff for her, enabling her to bolster her resume and also gain experience running a team. She didn't sit back and wait for someone. She asked them to create the opportunity for her. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, every black that has gone in and interviewed for a coaching position has asked.
Yeah.
Not one of them that walked in and said, I really don't want the job. I'm just sitting here. They've all asked, but they've been turned down so many times, Charlton. Frustration sets in after a while, and you know that there's a proverbial wall there if you're a black man or woman in trying to get a coaching position.
Well, it's about having the stronger mentality, Big C. Some people just quit the first time. Others fight through. When you think about what Smith did, academic credentials, knowledge of the game, and knack for data analysis, Brooks expected major league clubs to quickly snatch her up, and after she applied for the league's diversity program, fellowship program, Big C, instead came away confused when executives who interviewed Smith questioned her about her passion and desire. We see a lot of that happening about Justin Fields. Well, he's a great player. He went, I think, 50 touchdowns, 1 interceptions when he had a complete season, but we don't know if he makes good decisions, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is what I think about, Charlton. They're asking, they're interviewing, they're answering all the questions. And because of your intelligence, they said, well, you don't have passion. Because you can answer all the questions and you leave them stumped, well, I think that you lack passion, and that I can't understand why you're here interviewing for the job. I mean, we get some of the stupidest responses when it comes down to these interviews of African-American individuals, Charles.
Yeah, well, that's why you gotta have a moxie. You gotta be determined to get through, because the world's not for weak people, Big C. When you think about how Bianca Smith made her baseball history, a little less than 3 years after her tearful epiphany in Brooks' office, she has taken strides toward making her unlikely dream a reality. And this is what I encourage everybody to do. Don't worry about how tough something is. Learning to swim is tough. You either swim or you drown. But people overcome that. Everybody has to overcome something. But the stronger you are mentally, the more likely it is to happen. She took strides making those things happen. No matter how tough it was. Think about what happened last month. The Boston Red Sox hired a 29-year-old as a minor league coach, Big Z, making her the first African-American woman to serve as a coach in professional baseball history. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, he took the step of hiring her, Charlton. He prepped her to get a job elsewhere through, development. And those situations didn't work out. He sent her out with a resume, Charlton, that was good as any man that he had ever sent out. But she kept getting turned down by various organizations. And he couldn't even understand, so he took the banter and said, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what it takes. Everybody needs someone to give them an opportunity, but you got to go make your opportunity happen. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. When you think about the Red Sox organization, they have their own history of good and bad relationships, Big C, with different ethnic groups. But you think about the Red Sox, faith in Smith reflects the changing profile of big league coaches. The smartest front offices no longer making the mistake of conflating playing skills with the ability to teach. Oftentimes, former players may walk right into a coaching position, and oftentimes it may not work out any more than someone who's never played the game, but who's been around the game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it comes down to the buddy system when it looks at former players, Charlton, someone that they have a personal relationship with. It's not always having the ability to teach, as you just stated. Many blacks have the ability to teach, but the people who are hiring, I think the biggest fear is finding success in the black culture, Charlton, and that the white culture, they feel at some point, is going to lose out if you keep finding success in the black culture and they come out and they achieve as head coaches.
Yeah, and that can be said in any field, Big C. And that's what I like about people who go out and they make it happen against all odds. Everybody says you got to try harder. I remember being told that when I was growing up by my mother and father. You just got to try harder, and not to complain, but just try harder and make that a mantra. I doubt if any person makes anything in life without having some kind of obstacles. And just like learning to swim, you can't, when I put my kids in swim classes, Big C, I remember how I was ready to jump in the water to get them just in case they started to sink. There's some professional swimmers that were at the college course, but my kids were right about 2 and 3 years old when I put them in the swimming classes, Big C. And some kids learn faster than others, but you just keep doing it at your own pace, and you keep trying, and you keep trying, and that's what a lot of people have had to do no matter who they are and what color they are. I want to touch on that thing about trying, and sometimes we talk so much about athletes. When you think about Macon B. Allen, Big C, a lawyer, Macon B. Allen was born 1816, Big C. He was a black teacher and lawyer and a judge from Indiana, born in Macon. Think about this. Macon Allen is named, grew up a free man. He learned to read and write on his own, and he eventually landed his first job as a school teacher. And he further improved his reading and writing skills. And then Allen moved to Portland, Maine, Big C, on the East Coast. In the early 1840s, he studied law, and he worked as a law clerk for General Salmon Fesson, Big C, a local abolitionist attorney. After passing the Maine bar exam, he was granted his license to practice law in Maine. July 3rd, 1844, Big C. When you think about how difficult things were back in those days for African Americans, Big C, you think about 1844. He was one of the first African Americans licensed to practice law in the United States of America. That's so important. He also experienced difficulty finding legal work in Maine because white Americans were not willing to hire a black attorney. Few black lives in the state at that time, 1845, He moved to Boston, Massachusetts, the home of what we were just talking about, a woman getting the chance as a job as a baseball coach, Big C, a woman doing that, African-American. It doesn't matter where, I mean, it's just you got to keep fighting. Think about what happened in Boston. Walking about 50 miles to the exam site because he could not afford transportation. He passed the exam. He worked together to, think about this, with Robert Morris. They opened the first black law office in the United States. They didn't beg white people for an office. They opened their own. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, many people have opened their own offices, but to get into mainstream employment on any level, whether it's sports or in just the general work public, Charlton, when you look at African Americans who try to compete, you basically have to be perfect when it comes down to competition. Not good. You have to be perfect because you're always judged against those others. And when it comes down to those endeavors, being as good as somebody is makes you less qualified. And we see that all the time when we see coaches not getting jobs in their profession, in the field that they strive for, whether it's in collegiate or professional level, Charlton. You have to come out with this air of perfection. Even when we look at black players in certain positions, you have to have perfection about you to be a quarterback in the NFL if you're African American. Not good, but you have to have perfection about you. And this is, yes, we all work hard to get to points of accomplishment. But why is there so much pressure put on certain individuals for being as good as somebody else, and that's not satisfactory?
And I think a lot of us can learn a lot from what Macon B. Allen did. He didn't complain. He didn't beg white people to treat him fair, Big C. He used that same thing that people learn when they swim.
I would beg to differ, because when you said white people would not employ him as an attorney, he was asking them to allow him to represent them. And they said, no, we don't want you. So he was seeking, and he was being turned down.
But Big C, he's different than what you're saying. You got to really listen to what he's saying to all black Americans. Quit begging people to swim. You got arms and legs, and start swimming, and quit begging somebody to let you swim. Go out and swim. Get your own pool. Listen to what he did, because it's so important based on what's going on today. People can complain from cradle to grave, Big C, but he quit begging people, and he understood that racial prejudice existed, and it kept him from making a living in certain mainstream groups, Big C, but he created his own law firm. That's so important, you could say it a million times. After passing the rigorous qualifying exam to become Justice of the Peace in Massachusetts in 1848, Allen became the first black American in the United States to hold a judicial position. This despite not being a U.S. citizen under the Constitution. He moved to Charleston, South Carolina after the Civil War to practice law, and he was elected to be a judge in the probate court in 1874. And that's more important than begging somebody for anything. He stopped begging, he started swimming, and he realized if he's going to make something happen, he can't beg somebody else, because that's a victim mentality. He became a lawyer and opened his own law firm. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as he was elected, Charlton, that was prior to black voting rights being taken away after the Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation. Blacks had rights, and they held state houses in those days, and you could run for office. But that all was revoked by Andrew Jackson, Charlton, and blacks lost those rights to hold those positions.
Yeah, well, I just want people to know, just like swimming, people can say, how come I can't swim when that person can? You got to get the right coaching and teaching, but you also got to have the moxie to keep trying. The last thing I'll say about this gentleman, because I think it's so perfect for what we're going through in this climate today. You can stand in two lines, the line of, hey, they won't let me have nothing, let me just complain, or you can go out and do it yourself. Following Reconstruction, Big C, he moved to Washington, D.C., and he worked as an attorney himself in the Land and Improvement Association. He continued to practice law until he died at 78 years old on June 11, 1894. Now, what does that have to do with today? People saying, oh, they won't let me have something, they won't give it to me, that's racism, that's prejudice, and all that garbage. He could have died with that story, but he chose not to, Big C. He stopped complaining that somebody wouldn't give him something. He got his face in the book, and he studied to become a lawyer, and he passed the bar, and when he couldn't get someone to give him an opportunity, he did like people who swim. He learned to swim on his own, and that's the biggest message. that any African American can have today. There's two lines. You can complain from cradle to grave, or you can learn to swim in life. And everything you want to do, you got to go out and do it. You can't keep begging somebody because they won't let you have it. That's what drives me every day. I know that things happen in life where it's not fair, but I am not going to sit around looking for every time somebody's trying to stop me from achieving. If that's the case, people may as well go home and go to bed because somebody won't let them have something. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he didn't stop, Charlton. His judgeship was taken away from him, and that's why he had to resort back to private practice. It was stripped from him by white people of that era. In Carolina, once all of the blacks lost their voting rights and all, Charlton, once they changed the state house, they took his judgeship away from him, and so he moved back to D.C. where it was a majority black population where he could practice law.
Yeah, but I think you still missed the point, Big C. He had two lines to stand in. Just like somebody learning to swim by teaching the kids to swim. You can teach your kids to swim, or you can say, man, it's difficult. What if you drown? Or that water's difficult. They won't let you swim fast enough. That man learned to swim. He learned to create his own law firm, and he stopped begging other people for what God gave him the ability to do, which is practice law. He did it without complaining, and that's the message I want to give to African Americans. I know a lot of people want to point out when white injustice happens. They close their eyes when black injustice happens. They only look in one direction, and oftentimes too many of us do harm to ourselves, but we keep looking at the different skin color of somebody else, and to me, that's a road to failure. This is my opinion. I'll always believe in rising and shining and not rising and complaining as to why I can't do something. I want to touch on the world of sports because it's the same thing. In every athlete, Big C, I've yet to meet any athlete, whether it's high school, college, or professional, that said, you know what, coach made it easy for me to make the team. I didn't have to compete. I even heard, I believe, with the New York Jets, Coach Sala was saying, no, it was the Philadelphia Eagles, actually. One of their coaches was asked a question about who's going to be your starters, and he said it's all open to competition. You know, Jalen Hurts could complain. I can't believe he's going to make me compete. But no, we got to be like Mr. Allen, Big C. You got to either sink or swim, and quit complaining that you can't have something. Just complain to that person in the mirror that you're not willing to do it on your own, if that makes sense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I look at the coach from the Philadelphia Eagles and the comments that he made about it's an open competition at quarterback. It's ironic that the incumbent quarterback was African-American on the team, and the quarterback that he's competing against is a washed-up white quarterback that's in a backup position. But he says, you know, I trust him as much as I trust you, and I'm going to give him every chance to start.
And that's fair. So Jalen Hurts can complain that the coach is going to make him compete, or he can do the best he can to be the best quarterback he can. And that's the message that I think a lot of our young black people got to hear. Black boys and black girls, they're going to have a narrative. I was talking to a political leader today in California, and we were talking about some things that are going on right now. And unfortunately, we spend too much time talking about how they won't let us have something instead of learning how to swim. He's an older man. He's already lived most of his life. And I appreciate that sentiment. And I don't want to sit around complaining about something. I just want to learn to swim. Major League Baseball, the Oakland A's, they learned to swim, Big C. They extend their winning streak to 11, helped by 2 errors in the 10th, Big C. It's like the Bay Area win. It just keeps blowing, Big C. It smells like they're going to win a game. When you think about it, on Wednesday, after Oakland Athletics extended their winning streak to 11 games, in a 10th inning rally, fueled by 2 errors and a 13-12 victory over the Minnesota Twins, Big C, the great Nelson Cruz had 2 home runs, 4 RBIs for the Twin, and then Byron Buxton hit a 2-run homer against Lou Trevino in a 12-10 lead in the 10th, Big C. And the rest was history. They went on to win their 11th game, Big C. Your thoughts?
They've been on a hot streak. You know, they started out the season on a cold streak. They lost their first 10. They've turned things around, Charlton, and found their stride, and have one of the longest winning streaks in baseball this year. One of the longest winning streaks in baseball, Big C, from one of the organizations that, in my opinion, is the least maybe respected, of course, in the Bay Area of all sports teams. The San Jose Sharks, when they had crowds, they had sold-out crowds. The 49ers, they had sold-out crowds. The Raiders, maybe not as much. And then when you look at the Giants, they used to have sold-out crowds all the time. But it's always the Oakland A's that would consider in a it's about 35,000 seat baseball stadium, the way they mapped off Mount Davis.
but they would be lucky, Big C, if they got 22,000 fans every night, and that's on a weekend. On a weekday, they'd be lucky if they got 15,000, but they're one of the more successful teams, fans or no fans, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they're successful, Charlton, but no one knows who's in their lineup, and I think that hurts the organization over the years. Ever since Billy Beane has taken over the A's, it's like from year to year, you're trying to figure out who's swinging the bat, who's throwing the ball off the mound.
Yeah.
Because they have such a low-budget roster, Charlton. You live there in that area, and you can't name 4 players on the team.
Yeah, same thing for the Giants. People come and go. But even when they were winning, Big C, and everybody knew who they were, and they knew all the names, I think the San Francisco Giants were the team that nobody knew where they were. So it comes in cycles. There was a time when the Giants played down at not AT&T Park, but Candlestick Park. I remember doing a game. It was a stats game. I was a talent stats. It was Philadelphia. They came to San Francisco, and it was a weekday game. There must have been about 12,000 fans at the Stick, and that was back in the day when the A's were always averaging about 30,000. So it comes and goes in cycles, Big C. Major League Baseball, the great Max Scherzer, Big C, his form was a little bit sore from trying to grip the baseball maybe too hard. But if you think about the control that he had when he let it fly, Big C, he loaded the bases in the first inning. He needed 49 pitches, Big C. That's just to get through 2 innings, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, normally you yank your starter at that time, but Scherzer's been one of those guys who can always bounce back. He's a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, Charlton, and you always have, consideration for him when he's struggling on the mound.
Yeah, the guy is just like, I saw that happen with it was in Chicago, the Cubs were playing at home, and the Atlanta Braves came to town, and by the time the top of the first inning was over, it was 6-0 Braves. Big C, they still didn't pull that good, boy. But going back to Scherzer, Big C, he found things out pretty well. He's retired 12 of his last 13 at batters. He struck out 9 in 6 innings to move up to number 21 on the career strikeout leaderboard, Big C, helping the Washington Nationals. They edged the St. Louis Cardinals 1-0 on Wednesday, and that's when it gets fun. The 3-time Cy Young Award winner said, all you can do is attack the zone and then let them get out, Big C. And it's a lot like when we talked about Mr. Allen becoming a lawyer or any other young black kid in this country, white, black, Hispanic, whatever you are. Quit telling yourself that you can't make it because somebody won't let you. If that's the case, you already have opposition in life, just like learning to swim. A swimming pool doesn't care what color you are, and sometimes people do. But the worst thing you can do is keep telling yourself that you can't make it because of somebody on the outside of your brain. It's just like this pitcher, Big C. On the inside, he was determined to win, and he found a way to do it. And I hope the young message, like the lawyer born back in the 1800s, to African-American kids, quit telling people how you can't do something because of racism. Find a way to overcome it, because you can't teach your kids that they can't make it because of somebody not liking them. They got to find a way to do it for themselves if that's what it takes, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, society is not that easy or that kind, Charlton. There's plenty of roadblocks out there for everybody. Everybody is striving to achieve in American society. But when the people who have the power are not allowing you to get a toehold on any part of it, it makes it difficult for anybody, regardless of culture. And we've seen that. We talk about it all the time when it comes down to season-ending coaching hiring. And I don't think that any of these African-American coaches have given up their aspirations for being a head coach in whatever league they're applying for. They just keep hearing the word no, and they keep going back and applying year after year. So I don't think that any of them or anybody has the defeatist attitude when it comes to that. It's just that the people who have the power to let somebody in choose not to let them in. I think when Jerry Jones was interviewing Marvin Lewis a couple of years ago, when he decided to hire Mike McCarthy, he said, Mike McCarthy, you're good enough to stay here at my house. Marvin Lewis, you have to go spend the night in a hotel room. So you're looked at differently from those people that are in power that are making the employment decisions.
Yeah, and that may be true. I'm going to take the Big C pause. And when I come back, I want to talk about some things that my mother's always said to me. Because I've just got to talk about it. Like I was talking to my friend this morning. For black Americans, no matter who you are, we're going to take this Big C pause. And in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, and there's so many more apps that are growing. I really appreciate that. I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see our apps pop up from all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I want to touch on that same thing that the lawyer that was born in the 1800s spoke about, Big C. He was born in slavery, even though he was not a slave, Big C. And there's something that he said that my mom always said to me when I was growing up. And it was a coin back in the 17th century, Big C. It's called Rise and Shine. And something that I've learned to tell my own children, no matter what they're facing, Big C, that you got to do what you got to do. And you don't blame anybody, ask God for permission and help, and then go out and do it. Because oftentimes in my life, Big C, and I'm just speaking from my own experience, and everybody has theirs, she told us to stay away from people that said you can't do something because of racism, you can't do something because you're black, they won't let you have something because you're black. She didn't believe in that garbage. She grew up in the Jim Crow South, Big C, and she came to California to get away from some of that garbage, but she didn't bring that attitude of I can't do something. And I just want to encourage other people. You got two lines to stand in. You got one line where people are going to always remind you that you can't do something because racism. That's going to lead you to failure. You got to find that line that says, like my mother tells me, you got to rise and shine. If you want something, you go out and make it happen. Quit begging people for something you can do for yourself. Plant your own garden, learn to swim, and stay away from people who keep telling you that you can't make it because of racism. Just keep going and get the best you can out of life, Big C. Your thoughts?
As we have 43 states right now, Charlton, passing anti-voting laws across America against people that are less fortunate than what they are. That we have gerrymandering that are changing state laws. Today there were 6 states that, as of today, there's 6 states that have written in anti-voting legislation, Charlton. They've also even written in against the First Amendment free speech that you cannot protest up and down the street, Charlton. Otherwise, you can be arrested and held without bail. There's also a law that was passed in 2 states, Charlton, that if people are protesting, you are allowed to run through that crowd with your car and not be prosecuted. That you have the right to run over American citizens if they're protesting. And the pictures that they held up posters, Charlton, of the Black Lives Matter protest that went on last summer. That if you run through one of these crowds with your car, you will not be prosecuted. So as you look at people putting up obstructions against American citizens, they are telling American citizens no. We're talking about the law. The people who are writing state laws, Charlton, are telling the American people no. And these are the states that these people have to live in. Even though they try to vote and get these people out of office, Charlton, through gerrymandering and redistricting, they can hold the state houses and oppress the people of those states. These same laws that they've been fighting against for hundreds of years in America, they keep trying to find ways, Charlton, to reinvent.
Yeah, and there's always opposition. There's always opposition to everything, different parties. There's opposition, and it's designed that way, Big C. That's why
So how do you, when they make it a state law, Charlton, how do you change that as an individual, even though you vote, but they gerrymander so much that they can control the state houses, Charlton, and as the private citizens, mainly minority people of color, that they had up on these posters saying that we will lock your butt up. You're not going to be allowed to do this in our state. What do the people who are peacefully protesting, not breaking any previous laws until you enacted these laws to restrict their freedom of speech, what do they do against that?
Just like the Attorney Allen that I opened the show talking about, Big C, we're in a nation of the law, and it's going to take lawmakers to fight for opportunities for people. People can protest all they want.
The lawmakers change the law, Charlton, away from what the Constitution states to fit their state because of the population control that they have there, to say that minorities can no longer march.
Well, they did not just say minorities, if you're going to be accurate. It's called executive order. And in every state in the country, Big C, it takes lawmakers to adjudicate law. Not a citizen complaining and marching. They can march, but they don't have the power of the pen. It's about lawmaking on each side of the aisle, Big C. It's always been that way.
The governor signed them into law today. That's what I'm saying. The governor of those states, the state houses who passed those state laws to be anti-people protesting, Charlton, against what we saw this past summer. And he held up distinct pictures of Black Lives Matter protests. They were targeting those groups. That's what they said.
Well, at the same
but
time...
think about this.
Yeah.
No one has attacked the people who did the insurrection on the nation's capital. They didn't hold up any people. They said that was okay to do that. I wonder what it would have been if those had been people of color attacking the nation's capital. And how would they have been treated?
Yeah, and we all know they would have been treated differently, Big C, but it's still going to take...
Do we know that, Charlton? Do we know that? Because they didn't do anything to them. Just like I opened the show, Charlton, and I was talking about Kyle Rittenheiser, and everybody saw this young man, Charlton, shoot 3 people during the protest last summer. And the police didn't shoot him, Charlton. But yet in the past 2 days, they shot 2 black people. So it's different. It's just different how they treat people.
Yeah, maybe, but at the same time, if we're going to be honest, there's a lot of black people that don't treat each other fair. So we can't act like we live in
a lot of white people that don't treat each other
exactly.
fair.
So doesn't it?
Every culture.
Exactly.
We're talking about a specific entity, but you cannot cover for that entity by blaming somebody else.
No, but you got to realize, if you're going to be fair, there's good and bad in all people. There's good lawyers, there's bad lawyers. Anything that happens in law is going to take lawyers and lawmakers to change the law. Not people marching. It takes an act of lawyers, or it takes an act of Congress, or it takes executive order. And that's going to happen. That's how this country's been founded. We're a nation of the law, Big C. It doesn't mean you're always going to be happy, but that's what it takes. It takes lawmakers to go on and decide what's going to be law, and every law that's passed can also be appealed or amended.
So what you're saying is that you were happy with the events of the past couple of days of that black girl being shot in Ohio and the black man being shot also while he was fleeing.
So you're happy that happened? Is that what you're saying? You're happy it happened?
No, I'm asking you. You saying that you were happy with that?
No, I'm saying, are you happy that it happened, that she was shot, Big C?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so don't be so ignorant and assume that I am, because that's a stupid statement, and that's a shame when black Americans can point a finger at another black American that you know you're wrong about saying that, but you want to put it out there, and then you'll blame racism when white people do it. That's not fair at all. But I want to go back. That's your opinion, and everyone can hear your opinion. Major League Baseball, Salvador Perez had a game-ending RBI single, and the Kansas City Royals avoided a sweep by topping the Tampa Bay Rays 9-8 on Wednesday night. And George Soler, Big C, and Hunter Dozier and Carlos Santana, he homered for Kansas City, which trailed 6-3 heading to the bottom of the 7th inning. And then Scott Barlow, 1-0, allowed Joey Waddell's tie-breaking RBI double in the 9th, but got the win when the Royals trailed. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Royals are one of those teams that Charlton had been struggling for the past couple of years. And big victories like this really help out the organization. Everybody seems to be migrating towards the Kansas City Chiefs out there right now, Charlton. But Kauffman Stadium is one of the greatest places to watch a baseball game in the United States.
It really is one of the greatest places. And when the fans get in there and cheer, it's even more great for people to cheer. And they'll cheer against the opponents, and they'll cheer for the home team sometime. Just like in life, it's all fair and level word, Big C. When you think about Major League Baseball, rain and then snow, it halts the games with the Diamondbacks leading the Reds in the 8th. Stephen Crichton, Big C, pitched a scoreless 9th inning for the second saves, helping the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Cincinnati Reds. And the Diamondbacks beat them 5-4 on Wednesday night. They finished of a suspended game, Big C. Tuesday night game was halted because of heavy rain that we could really use in California. We only get sunshine, no rain. But soon they got snow, and after the Reds reliever Lucas Sims walked in a run to give the Diamondbacks a 5-4 lead in the 8th, Big C, it was a great game, but Mother Nature decided who was going to win in the end, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, and that's one of the things I've never been able to figure out. You will halt a baseball game because of rain, but you won't halt it because of snow. And the last I checked, the baseball was white.
Yep.
And so a pitcher got to have a true advantage throwing the ball in the snow.
Yeah.
You can pick up a snowball and throw it, you don't know it's coming.
You know, they have at every Major League Baseball stadium in the batter's box, when you're looking out the home run field, there's always a spot on the back of the home run wall, in front of the home run wall, where it's dark, it's black, like a black curtain or a black paint, Big C, because that way they don't want to distract from the ball. And I've always wondered why they don't do that when it comes to hitting a baseball, because a lot of times, if you can't see that the baseball is coming, oftentimes you might get hit by it. But they don't. I guess you're not bothered by the snow when it comes to Major League Baseball. I want to talk about the great Bryce Harper, Big C. He's playing a lot better baseball this year than he has over the last couple of seasons, Big C. Bryce Harper tied the game with one swing and scored the winning run, one hand brushing the plate. The Philly slugger was in the mix of the two late rallies that saved him from a sweep. That's the most dangerous Bryce Harper you can find, starter Zach Eflin said, Big C. You're starting to feel the presence that goes through the whole team. Everybody's getting fired up about it. Andrew Knapp hit the winning single in the 9th inning, and Harper hit a tying solo homer in the 7th inning. And Philadelphia beat the San Francisco Giants by the score of 6-5, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm just wondering if your buddy Bryce Harper came over to your house after the game. You guys sit back and threw back a cup of cold with y'all.
No.
I know your admiration that you have for that young man, and I think y'all best chums it from time to time. But this is what Bryce Harper's being paid to do, Charlton.
Yeah.
He got that big contract 2 years ago from the Phillies when he left the Washington Nationals, and now he's starting to deliver early in this season.
Yeah, he's starting to deliver. He's playing a lot better. I think he was making way too much money, but he's right about 10th in batting right now, so things are starting to shape up for the great Bryce Harper. Major League Baseball, Baltimore Orioles, they were eager to swing, and Trevor Rogers was happy to let him, Big C. Early contact helped Rogers pitch a career-high 7 innings without allowing a runner past second base, and the Miami Marlins earned a split of the 2-game series by winning 3-0 on Wednesday. Rogers needed only 7 pitches in the first inning, and then 8 in the 6th inning. He recorded 5 first-pitch outs, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, this is what you want from your pitcher, Charlton. You know, that rested arm to come in there that nobody can touch. And, you know, you talked about Scherzer earlier requiring 49 pitches to get through the first 2 innings, and that did not happen in this game, and they walked away with an easy victory.
Yeah, with well, maybe not easy, but it looks easy when you're doing the right thing on the mound. Javier Baez insisted that he was seeing the ball well and had his timing down, though his approach was a little bit off and the results were not what he wanted. This time, everything clicked. He hit a grand slam, and the Chicago Cubs, Big C, they took advantage of a season high 4 errors by the New York Mets in a 16-4 romp on a chilly Wednesday night at Wrigley Field. And sometimes to have a team in Chicago score 16 points, that was probably more than the Bears average at home, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's that old thing, take me out to the ballpark. Javi
Yeah.
was taking it out of the ballpark,
Yeah.
Charlton. A great game for Chicago last night on the South Side. This is what the Cubs need to stay in that hunt against the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, they got to stay in that hunt against the St. Louis Cardinals. And it's always a great series. And oftentimes there's so much going on with those two great franchises. And I just love when baseball's back. They're going to get more fans in the stands, and that's what they're saying, Big C. I don't know if it's a wise thing, but sometimes people don't always do what's wise, and they're going to try to bring some of the fans back in the attendance. I think we've already seen some fans in the attendance, Big C. At the same time, it's a quiet story, but, you know, depending on what region of the country, COVID's still rising a little bit. I want to
But how do you practice social distancing and wear your mask when you're chugging a cold beer and eating a hot dog at a baseball game?
Yeah, that's the truth. So obviously people are thinking herd immunity. I think there's been 200 million Americans vaccinated, according to President Biden and some reports. So maybe herd immunity is going to start kicking in, and we hope that does for the sake of this country and the world. I want to just touch on top 10 batting averages. I know you like the pitching, Big C. I like when they hit the ball over the fence. Ronald Acuna Jr., he's batting .419. You have Brandon Nimmo, who's batting .395. Mike Trout's at batting .393. And then Yerman Mercedes may have hit the longest home run this year, batting .390, and he's doing his thing, Big C. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is batting .383. Justin Turner batting .381. Xander Bogaerts batting .379. Jesse Winker at .373. Joey Wendell, .365. And then the great J.D. Martinez, would you believe he's batting .362, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, it's about, a long season and staying consistent. We talked about Raul Lucania Jr. a couple of weeks ago, how he was leading the Atlanta Braves, and he was really the only bright spot
That's
that
right.
they had. I think he has a little bruised rib going on right now, but it's good to see Mike Trout back in the race. Mike Trout missed half of last season with foot surgery, Charlton.
Yeah.
But it didn't affect his bat when he came back.
No, he brought the same bat that he was using to get that $400 million contract, Big C, and it still hits like a laser beam. It's all fair and level war. Also, speaking of using bats to hit people, Big C, in National Hockey League, one of the only sports where you can actually hit somebody with a hockey stick and not get thrown out of the game temporarily, forever, Big C.
Well, when you think about the NHL, I mean, every time you show up, a fight breaks out. They're some of the greatest athletes in the world skating around on the ice.
Yeah.
And as we look at the invasion of the NHL across the United States, Charlton, playing in some very hot weather cities,
yeah,
Las Vegas, California, Florida, Charlton, you think about where hockey was formed up in the Northeast and in Canada.
Yeah.
They have to think about bringing their suntan lotion when they play down.
They got to think about their suntan lotion. The Las Vegas Golden Knights, no longer the new kids in the NHL block, Big C. That's a perennial powerhouse. Jonathan Marchand scored twice, and the Golden Knights became the first NHL team to clinch a playoff berth, beating the San Jose Sharks 5-2 on Wednesday night for their 8th straight victory, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the Knights and how this franchise was formed, Charlton, through free agency when they were an expansion team,
yep,
and they made the Stanley Cup Finals in their inaugural season in the NHL. But they've been a perennial playoff presence ever since. This is a team that has developed a legacy of winning, where you think about some long-standing franchises in the NFL,
yep,
I mean the NHL,
yep,
have swallowed in a dundrum.
Yeah, and it's something about being down in Las Vegas. Sometimes you get the extra relaxation that you may not get at other places outside of the city limits, if that makes sense to you, Big C.
Well, no, you can bet on yourself in Vegas. That's what you can do.
Yeah, well, double entendre. Yes, you can bet on yourself, if that makes sense to you. It's all fair and level war. Goaltender Spencer Knight, 20 years old, makes the most of an NHL debut. He leads the Florida Panthers to an easy victory, Big C. Spencer Knight made 33 saves in his NHL debut as the recharged Florida Panthers defeated the Columbus Blue Jackets 5-1 on a Tuesday night in Sunrise, Florida. Knight, a 2019 first-round pick for Florida. He came out of Boston College, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about that, Charlton, being 20 years old. You're not even old enough to drink, so I don't know if you think that's like to Vegas when they play the Golden Knights.
Yeah.
But to go out there and have a glass full of ice with nothing in there, Charlton, I guess he was a little frustrated and knocked down every fucking fight.
Yeah, it's all fair and level war. I want to try to pump your microphone a little bit, Big C. It's all fair and level war. I wish these young people the very best of everything getting into the world of sports. Big C, I want to run down the back nine of our program today. NBA basketball, your favorite MVP candidate, even though I think it's going to be Joel Embiid or Steph Curry. Who knows? It's all fair level war. The Joker scored 25 points, made 3 key free throws down the stretch to give the Denver Nuggets a 106-105 over the Portland Trail Blazers that everybody beats lately, Big C, on Wednesday night at the Motor Center. Michael Porter Jr. dropped 17 points, all in the opening quarter, Big C, and then the Nuggets won their 4th straight game. Dollar Dame, Hulu does have live sports. Dollar Dame only scored 22 points for Portland, which has struggled against Western Conference teams that sit higher in the standings. The Trail Blazers lost the 3rd straight time, and being at home is not helping them at all. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Jokic is like clockwork, Charlton. You can write it in every day. And I know when Jamal Murray went down with that team, Charlton, with that horrific knee injury, you felt that they would fall by the wayside. But Michael Porter Jr. has stepped up his game. He scored 17 in the first frame, Charlton. He hit all 8 of his shots in the first quarter and got them off to a good start. Yeah, he got them off to a good start. I still think that at the end of the day, the Nuggets will be who we think they are. They're going to be going in a puff of smoke. They'll be gone from the playoffs. Just my opinion. Also, one of the greatest stories for NBA basketball, and when you think about Coach of the Year, you got to look at Phoenix Suns, Big C. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, and the Suns walked off winners on the road, even though Philly was a little bit depleted, but who is it nowadays? Think about this. The second time this week against one of the top teams in the East,
the great Paul dropped 28 points. Booker dropped 19. Bridges had 18 to lead the Phoenix Suns, Big C, to a 116-113 victory over Philadelphia on Wednesday. The great Joel Embiid, maybe the MVP, since Harden doesn't want it anymore. He had 38 points, 17 rebounds, and an oh-so-close shot from out of bounds to the rim. It rolled in and came out. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, if he had made that shot, Charlton, we'd be talking about that shot in empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a tremendous effort by Joel Embiid. I mean, they were down by 3.
Yep.
All the Suns had to do was make a free throw, and the game was over.
Yeah.
But Embiid grabbed the rebound on the missed free throw attempt, Charlton, and launched it to late to the court.
Yeah.
I mean, he got all of it. The ball hit the backboard.
Yep.
He was halfway down the basket and came back out, Charlton. Just an unbelievable attempt and a hurtful loss in that game for Philadelphia.
Yeah, it was a tough loss, Big C. They've been had by Golden State, and they've been had by the Phoenix Suns. Maybe they should have had the Big C burger instead of the Philly cheesesteak. It's a tasty burger. It is made with exotic meats, and that would have been an exotic play for the great Joel Embiid, Big C. Maybe, just maybe, MVP, because nobody else seemed to want it. But Curry's still trying to do his thing, even though it came to an end last night. Big C, you can only score 30 points a game so many times. Even though, as I pause to say that, the great Wilt Chamberlain, I believe he had 56 games in a row of scoring at least 30 points. But who counts all those stats back in the day, Big C? They didn't have SportsCenter. Coming off a historic run in which he made 78 three-pointers, the most in any 11-game stretch in the NBA history. Curry, Big C, the great Steph Curry, was bound to have a bad night eventually, and it happened Wednesday night as the Golden State Warriors. They closed out a 5-game trip, Big C, 118-114 loss at Washington, guarded him primarily by the great Russell Westbrook. Curry was frigid early, cooled off again. Again, Curry was poked in the eye in Philadelphia, and he, that made him miss a free throw, which he rarely does, and it seemed like that was bothering him in this game. I'm not making any excuses for him, but when you poke a guy in the eye, sometimes he sees 2 rims, and he's lucky if he hits the right one, if that makes sense. But guarded by the great Russell Westbrook, Big C, Curry cooled off a little bit late. The great Bradley Beal rallied the Wizards for their season-best 6th straight victory as Washington welcomed back fans for the first time in more than a year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Bradley Beal used one of your famous lines, Charlton. Not so fast, my friend, it takes over the scoring lead of the NBA. And he showed Steph Curry, this is my house.
Yeah.
And I'm going to win number 6 in a row here with you watching the show.
Yeah.
And the Wizards pulled it out at home.
Yeah, those Wizards can pull things. They can pull a rabbit out of their hat, if that makes sense to you. Every now and then it's all fair and love and war. But you want to know where a rabbit may not see the evening, Big C? Madison Square Garden, the great Julius Randle. We keep talking about MVP. This good old boy is knocking at the door. I don't know if they're letting him in yet, Big C. They didn't let in Patrick Ewing, but they might want to let in the great Julius Randle. He dropped 40 points, Big C. He had 10 rebounds. He led the New York Knicks to a 137-127 overtime win over the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday night. In the Knicks' NBA best 8th straight win, Big C, Randle, his driving layup with about 8 seconds left in regulation, gave the Knicks a 122-119 lead, but Bogdan Bogdanovic hit a three-pointer with 6.2 seconds left to send the game into overtime. The Knicks have scored the first 10 points of overtime, but also you have the great Trae Young for Atlanta. He also had his wings clipped. Had a hurt ankle. That may have cost him down that stretch, but no one can tell me that Julius Randle should not be at least considered for some type of MVP of something, Big C.
Well, he may be walking around talking about the king of New York.
Yeah.
Julius Randle has played lights out at the Big Apple.
Yeah.
Maybe he might take a bite out of it also. But, it's great to have the Knicks at the level of basketball that we have right now this season. This season started out with everybody talking about the Nets on the other side of town.
Yep.
But the Knicks were not just having that, Charlton. Thibodeau has this team playing outstanding. And if you think about it, the addition of Coach Thibodeau and also Derrick Rose that has brought some maturity to this New York Knicks team, Charlton, a former MVP with the Chicago Bulls.
Yep.
But the Knicks are going to be in the playoffs, and that's great for the NBA.
The Knicks are going to be in the playoffs, Big C. It's great for the NBA. Anthony Davis is back tonight. We don't know how well he's going to play, but he's back tonight against Dallas. But when I think about NBA basketball, isn't it amazing that we look at a team like the New York Knicks, and sometimes everybody says, I want a large market. I got to go to a large market so I can win games. What is it about the New York Knicks that have taken them so long so that even at a number 4 spot in the Eastern Conference, people are acting like they're the Knicks that had the great Willis Reed coming out of the tunnel? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think people were turned off by the New York Knicks and your buddy Tom Nolan. You know, the guy that you go out and have sushi with.
No, not
me. They thought of him as a rotten fish, Charlton. They were trying to get him out of the NBA.
Yeah.
But the fans have never shied away from Madison Square Garden, Charlton. You talk about true fans, ride or die.
Yeah.
They do that in New York. And the Knicks, whenever they can, they always have a packed house.
Yeah, they have it's a nice setup. I love MSG, Madison Square Garden, people doing their things. Tonight's schedule, the game, I record it because I really want to see it. Phoenix is at Boston, Big C. They got to make sure they turn up the heat on those Leprechauns, Big C. New Orleans at Orlando. Philadelphia's at Milwaukee in another big game, Big C. Detroit is at San Antonio. Charlotte is at Chicago. And the LA Lakers with Anthony Davis are in Dallas. And, they got to be careful because J.R. Ewing doesn't fight fair, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Dallas is one of those things. Mark Cuban likes to complain. Luka Doncic is always going to cry because he's not getting his calls from the officials. He's saying they're being unfair because they can't speak Lithuanian like he does. Yeah,
it's all fair in love and war. And I hope that we have a lot of success when it comes to people getting back off the hump. I want to also touch on, before we close out, I thought March Madness was good. I think they pulled it off. I think we only have Virginia Commonwealth that didn't play a game, and that they were going to line up against Oregon. So maybe they saw those green ducks and they were afraid to play against the duck and fix it. But college basketball, men's basketball pulled it off. Tonight, college volleyball, paying homage to our women, Big C. It's all come down to the Final Four. NCAA women's college basketball, actually volleyball, Big C. You have number 6 Washington Husky, and I think they're playing number 3 Kentucky in one semifinal game. The other game is Texas against number 1 Wisconsin. Should be some great volleyball play tonight, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got the Pac-12 participating, Charlton. Hooray. We're going to give you guys some roses out there, even though you're not in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
But, women's college volleyball, you talk about some tenacity amongst young athletes.
Yeah.
I used to always think that I could jump when I was young, Charlton, but watch these young ladies catapult off the court and rise above the net, spike the ball periodically.
Yeah.
It's an amazing athletic feat.
Yeah, I've seen some very athletic women that are doing their thing on the volleyball court. I've always admired how athletic they could be doing it on hardwood, diving down to the floor. It's all fair and love and war, Big C. And also, speaking of college, the NCAA playing rules oversight panel on Thursday, they announced that it will go into effect for the 2021 football season. Most significantly, in my opinion, it will expedite the overtime process. It's so-called two-point shootout, which teams would alternate running 2 plays until a winner. I guess they were going for 2 until a winner was determined. It's now going to begin in the 3rd overtime instead of the 5th overtime. The first 2 overtime periods will continue as drives are starting from the opponent's 25-yard line. But now a 2-point try must be attempted after a touchdown in the 2nd overtime. Ironically, it was back in the 90s at Memorial Stadium at Cal Berkeley. I was doing talent stats when the University of Arizona came in, I believe under the coach Terry Toomey at the time. I don't know how many overtimes they went to, but it was ridiculous, Big C. And I think that's when they started changing things, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the longest overtime was LSU and Texas A&M, Charlton, went into 7 overtime, which was just ridiculous torture on those young men playing on a hot, humid night down there at Texas A&M.
Yep.
And, when that game was over, you're talking about fatigue and dehydration.
Yeah.
All those players were struck with that. So I think this is more of a health move by the NCAA, and it's long overdue. Yeah, it's long overdue. At some point in time, you don't want to have a tie, but just maybe, in my opinion, you get 4 plays to score. Maybe if you don't score in your 4th time, maybe give them 3 plays to score. If that doesn't work, go down to 2 plays to score and get those kids off the field when they're already expended through playing 4 full quarters. That's just my opinion, Big C, but they will do whatever they feel is right. NFL football today, Big C, and again, everybody has their own opinion. NFL players really dislike, for the most part, the NFL's rule change on jersey numbers. Thursday's players criticized the rule that eased restrictions on approved jersey numbers for positions that was passed Wednesday. It's kind of like good luck trying to find the right people to block, Big C, whether it's quarterbacks or punters. I don't know if it bothers you that much. You always know you're going to tackle the guy in the other jersey. Who cares what number he has, Big C? Your thoughts? Well, I mean, this is a throwback to a bygone era when you look at the NFL. There was early days in the NFL where quarterbacks were wearing various numbers, Charlton, all the way up into the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
But, you know, the game had changed a few decades back to number structures that you only can wear certain numbers in certain positions. Now that has changed because you think of some of the blocking rules and tackling rules of who you can and cannot hit, Charlton. This could create a little bit of confusion. I know years ago we had linebackers wearing numbers in the 80s. Ted Hendricks did that with the Packers and the Raiders.
Yeah.
Mike Curtis wore number 32 at middle linebacker with the Baltimore Colts, Charlton. We've had an array of players wearing different numbers, but it had been structured so that only certain players in certain positions wore certain numbers. But now, you know, you might as well, just like in college, start giving defensive linemen single-digit numbers and let them wear them.
Yeah, I think it was Otis Sistrunk for the Oakland Raiders wore 00 back in the day, but it didn't matter what color.
That was Jim Otto, center, who wore 00. Also, Ken Burrow wore 00 with the Houston Oilers and New York Jets.
And they didn't care what your number was. They were going to try to poke you in the eye or pull you by the teeth, if that makes sense, while you're grabbing the face mask. Is all fair and level where I think they will figure that one out. I want to just close tonight with Major League Baseball schedule. Not a big schedule for Major League Baseball. You have the Arizona Diamondbacks at Cincinnati, Big C. That was like a football score. I won't give out the score. You also have the Pittsburgh Pirates at the Detroit Tigers, Big C. New York, the New York Yankees at Cleveland, the Seattle Mariners at Boston. We talked about Boston earlier in the show, what they were doing with their franchise. New York Mets at Chicago Cubs, Big C. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim at Houston. There's a lot of reports with video cameras in the Houston crowd, Big C. You have the Florida Marlins at San Francisco Giants later tonight. And San Diego at LA is only going to be a strong series if the Padres can start winning half of those games, but don't hold your breath for that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Padres have to get over the injury hump that they're going through right now. But also, when you're thinking about the Houston Astros, you don't have to worry about the video cameras. It's the trash cans that they're banging on.
Yeah, it's all fair in love and war. You know, there's something that I love about sports. I know they want to change everything in baseball. They want to put back the mound, Big C, the pitching mound. They want to go back another foot and a half. I don't care what they do. I hope they don't take spitting and grabbing your crotch out of the game, because that's too much cancel culture, if that makes sense to you. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we listen to so much in the media about people talking about shut up and dribble and let's keep athletics out of politics and out of mainstream life, Charlton, athletics is always a part of that.
Yep.
The mainstream wants to use athletics as a distraction to all of what's going on and do not want athletes to come out and state their voice and opinion on what's going on in society. But they're human beings and they're American citizens like everyone else, and they also have that complete right.
Yep.
Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. No one ever tells them to just shut up and drive.
No one just tells them to do anything, Big C. And you can always do what you want to do. You just got to rise and shine. Not everybody's going to believe in you, but you got to believe in that person in the mirror every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, as my mom always says, is never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.